to do is just get myself sorted here, play some music, wait for other people to join us in, and I'm just going to play our favourite NFT music artist, SOS, Double Shot. I'll explain after. There's an Aussie theme for this song, but SOS is a fantastic, and he actually mints NFT music on the Ravencoin chain, and he's one of our favourite musicians. So I'll play one of his songs, Double Shot, while we wait for other people to join us. Yeah, there was a great song by SOS, NFT music artist. Also does his music under Martin Scott Key on iTunes, so you can check that out. Some great songs. We sort of wait for people to join. It's people obviously in the middle of the day, in the afternoon, US. Here it's morning, so everybody's getting themselves sorted. But I will share the little bit of a backstory to that song. I think some of you actually will already heard the backstory, but for the people who don't, so that SOS done a version of this Double Shot. It's been done by a few different artists, and basically that that song was performed by an Aussie band called the Cockroaches back in the 80s. Yes, I'm almost 50 myself, so it shows my age. But so that was performed by the Cockroaches back in the 80s, and that was one of my favourite songs. They performed that song pretty much sort of their last gig here at the Expo 88 here in Brisbane. We held the Expo 88, and they actually performed on stage that song live. And the interesting part to that is that actually they basically disbanded the band, the Cockroaches, and they thought, we'll have a go at something, a different project, and they formed the Wiggles, the children's band, the Wiggles. So most of those guys are the Cockroaches. Actually, the Wiggles. You got Jeff, you got Anthony. Actually, the frontman for the Cockroaches ended up being the Wiggles manager. So he wasn't at the front; he was actually managing the Wiggles. But most of those guys actually came out of the Cockroaches, which obviously quite a famous now Aussie performer, the Wiggles, who have actually made that done very well for themselves. So just a little backstory, and you might be thinking, what's that got to do with property? Well, we do buy NFT art for our properties. So and again, we do obviously accumulate NFT assets in terms of our property tokens. So we actually have got one of his pieces, or a few pieces of his, in terms of NFT music. But yeah, look, we sort of wait a couple of minutes just to anything that's happening, Jake. Just sort of a general ad hoc before we formally start and introduce our special guest. Anything sort of happening on your end, Jake? Anything?
In terms of what Dwell Homes is going to be doing?
Just in general.
Or just anything going on in general?
Yeah.
Well, I'm downloading Revit on my computer right now to do a little touching up on our 3D models for the homes that we're trying to build for rent. So I'm kind of sitting here watching the percents go up one by one.
Nice.
Yeah. Sent some plans over to an architect. Things are moving along swimmingly.
Mm-hmm. Nice. It's great. Here in Brisbane, what's happening here in Brisbane? Actually, we've had some great weather in terms of obviously things are starting to move as far as the civils infrastructure for the Olympics. So we've got the 2032 Olympics here in Brisbane. So actually yesterday in my BRIK walk, I sort of shared the latest what's happening with the actual Olympic Village. So I guess we are 10 years out, but we like to start early. So we're already starting doing the civils around the Olympic Village, which is it's probably around sort of 3 miles away from our property token series, the BRIK. So I took some shots and took some videos in terms of, so you can actually see it in its raw form. That's some of the gardens and pathways have been been done around the Olympic Village. There's going to be some multi-story apartments for the athletes. It's going to be in those blocks. But yeah, so you can I guess when you sort of go back 10 years forward and you look back and you see it in its raw form, I think it's quite interesting. And obviously it'll be all there on Twitter as a part of the history leading up to it. But it's quite amazing in terms of something that obviously it's going to be quite a few apartment blocks there. I think it's going to be probably around 8, 9 from memory. What they're building for the athletes. That after that they're basically they're going to sell some of the apartments in the private sector, and also they're going to actually keep some of those for social housing as well. So it'll be sort of a minor part of it, but again, that's it's what they want, obviously, to making sure that there's that sort of assistance all over Brisbane. We don't have here in Brisbane. We don't have pockets of where it's like that social housing. That's not. It's very much mixed within the community around Brisbane. So that's sort of how we do things here. But yeah, look, we are recording the space. I don't want to keep people too long. We try to keep this to an hour. Might make a start. People will just join in as they come in. They can check it on the recordings. But probably introduce myself first. I'm Miguel Aleixo. I'm the managing director and co-founder of BRIK Projects. We tokenize Australian property, particularly here in Brisbane, Gold Coast, and Sunshine Coast. My background: I'm a CPA accountant by background, property developer by background. So that's combining the two, and I guess it's a great skills to have, the combination of both. And over the years, so it's been around 28 years, 30 years, combining those two areas, and love property. It's in the family. My co-founder Melinda, her family was always involved in property, either building, investing, renovating. My family's always been involved in property in terms of being involved in construction side of things, and then obviously investing. But we had no choice. It was in our DNA to for that pathway. So that's just a bit about me. Jake, you want to introduce yourself and a bit of background about you?
Hi, my name is Jake Menard. I'm project manager for Dwell Homes, Inc. We are in Illinois, which is in the Midwest U.S. Currently looking to tokenize some rental properties in the States, and we are looking to tokenize on the Ravencoin blockchain. And yeah.
Fantastic. And introducing Mary from RentalsToFreedom. We're going to introduce Mary. She's, firstly, we'd like to wish her a happy 40th birthday yesterday, Mary. I'm just trying to track the time zones as to exactly where. Mary, she's, as I call her, she's a serial property investor in a nice way. She's an educator on real estate property. I met Mary on her space that she hosts every week. And I always love the energy in terms of her space. And unfortunately, we haven't got a Chris that pumps up the space with the excitement, Mary. But But yeah, look, I'll let Mary sort of give her, just introduce herself and give her a bit of background, where she's been, where she is today, what's her vision going forward, and then we'll sort of I'll talk about what is real estate tokenization, and we'll open up for in terms of questions to Mary, and we'll open up before and talk more about real estate. So, Mary, over to you.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. It's very nice of you to ask me to be in your space, and thank you for the happy birthday wishes. You know, it's I thought it'd be tough to turn 40, but it wasn't so bad, and had a good day. But yes, I'm Mary. I talk about investing in real estate and using rental property to be able to eventually allow you to have financial freedom. And in the last couple of years, my husband and I have bought 7 rentals. We have a mix of single-family homes and small multifamily properties. We're actually currently looking to invest in a different area within the United States. So right now I live in Florida. That's where I've been investing in the Tampa Bay area, if anyone's familiar. And we're looking to invest in a different kind of market because we're sort of pivoting from what the housing market is doing right now in our area. And I actually kind of got into the tokenized real estate just through being here on Twitter and talking with people. And I was sort of moving into the cryptocurrency NFT space, and then sort of came across tokenized real estate and was really fascinated by it. So I've been trying to learn as much as I can. I invested in one company here that's in the US, and I am very much interested in investing in Australia. So I'm excited to talk with you today and kind of see what else I can learn from you.
It's fantastic, Mary. It's again, real estate fundamentals are all the same, right? Doesn't matter whether it's tokenized or not tokenized. It's obviously just in terms of looking forward. But thank you for your introduction there. And as I said, always get great value from your sessions that you host every week and some of the different topics. Now last week was the Airbnb topic that was discussed, and really enjoyed that discussion. So you will be in the spotlight. I'll ask you some questions, then I open up the floor for other people to ask questions as well, because obviously I have huge respect in terms of what you're doing in real estate, and as I said, the fundamentals are the same. Doesn't matter whether it's tokenized or not. But in terms of, I'll take it back when we talk what is tokenized real estate. I'll try to keep it short. I know we've got different levels of knowledge in terms of tokenized real estate, but if I could just sort of take it back a step in terms of, we all know real estate property. Obviously, when you buy it, it gets put on a database. So, for example, I use New York. Obviously, when you buy property in New York, it goes on a database. Obviously, the government database that registers the title on that database. Obviously, there is a restriction in terms of how many people can actually be on that property. As we've got here, there's obviously you can have joint tenant or tenants in common, depending in terms of what and every country's got its own ability, but you're still restricted. And obviously, there is clunkiness in terms of being able to sell and buy, the length of time it takes, and so forth. So basically, think of that in terms of the government. The New York has got a database where it registers the titles. So now think of blockchain. Blockchain is just like another database. People can sort of overcomplicate things. The blockchain, in terms of when you start talking about tokenizing property, the blockchain is another database. There's a few different databases, but basically that database on the blockchain is tokens go on registered on the blockchain, and they represent the property. So again, as I keep saying, the blockchain is another database, but it's the new way of actually registering data, which is a blockchain. That blockchain, once you actually put data on the blockchain, you can't change it. Generally speaking, there's different types of blockchains, databases. There's Ethereum's got its own blockchain. Ravencoin's got its own blockchain. The Binance has got its own blockchain when it comes to property. So these are all the different databases that are out there. And what happens is once the data goes on the blockchain, you can't change that data. And this is the beauty about, in some countries, that governments obviously control those databases in terms of the titles. governments can actually manipulate those databases. You could have a title to a property, and that basically tomorrow they can just wipe you away and actually take that title away from you. But and all basically say, well, we got no record of it, and by manipulating those databases. Again, New York, the actual New York, in terms of where you register titles in New York, they're actually looking to move their database that they're using for a long time. They're actually looking at moving that database to a blockchain. So to make it easier, more efficient, and again, in terms of no one can manipulate that database. So New York has actually taken the first step. They're the first ones, they're the leaders in terms of looking at that database where titles are held to take that onto the blockchain. Some people might be thinking in terms of, why would you go from one database to another database? Well, blockchain, in terms of when we start talking about tokenizing property on the blockchain, where basically tokens represent the property. So you've got the ability to buy and sell very efficiently. So you can buy one. There might be, probably using an example as a sort of a way to demonstrate. You might have a property. There is a title to that property, and that property, the tokens of that property represent the ownership of that property. And it might be, say, a $500,000 property, and you've got 10,000 tokens. That 10,000 tokens lie on that blockchain database, and basically people can buy and sell on that database. So this makes the transactional costs very efficient. In terms of the ability to buy and sell basically happens straight away, as opposed to, we know how long it takes to register a title and settle the property, and to think it's all those the whole long process it takes for the ownership when you buy a property on the traditional titles office. So again, this basically fast tracks things, cost wise, fast tracks things. No one can manipulate the data. Happens straight away. So there's so many benefits what the blockchain is going to give. But I think the critical part is the fractionalization. So meaning that in one property, this $500,000 property, you can have one token, have 50 tokens. So it's made up of 10,000 tokens. So it gives you the ability to own one or many in that property token series, as opposed to the lumpiness of traditional property where you have to own 100% or not 100%, or unless you go with other people. But basically, the fundamentals in terms of how the database works, in terms of blockchain is a database. You've got various chains out there. Some are obviously got more points of difference in terms of strengths than others. We in terms of like Jake mentioned, we tokenize our properties, the BRIK properties on the Ravencoin chain. Ravencoin chain came out of a bit fork from the Bitcoin. So it started with the fundamentals of Bitcoin, but the big strength of the Ravencoin chain is the asset tokenization side of things. So that's where the strengths lie. So whether it be property, whether it be NFTs and so forth on the Ravencoin chain, that's basically where the strengths lie. So, and again, as I said, there's many out there. It's just finding the ones that, basically horses for courses, as I keep saying. But if I just sort of come back to that example in terms of just to sort of hone in terms of tokenizing of property. So basically, people might have thought in the past of tokenizing or buying a property. They might have gone in with somebody or for other people to buy a $500,000 property. Now they can actually, got the ability to, not get involved with the bank. So they basically traditionally buy that property jointly. $500,000, everybody kicks in $100,000 and you sell on that property. Basically what we're doing in terms of, Jake and I and people who are tokenizing real estate is basically, rather than just being narrow, now we basically got a world market that basically can actually buy into a property. You can just buy one token into a property. So that $500,000, $500,000 property can now be bought by many people around the world. So you can buy one token, you can buy many. So again, just the ability to buy now, you settle straight away. You don't have to have a long process, and off you go in terms of having been an owner of a property in Australia, a property in the UK, a property, in New York, and all over the world. In terms of at the moment, there's by last count, there's 18 property tokenization platforms around the world. We're one of them. Jake's got his coming up soon. So again, it's very early, and just to give you some insights in terms of, I've pinned the reason for that pinned tweet that I put on this earlier. It just says, so that simplifies what's happening in property tokenization. There's secondary markets are important. So obviously people will be able to buy and sell on secondary markets, the property tokens like ours, they'll be able to do. But that T0 is actually the ultimate secondary market for tokenized assets, including real estate. So that they just actually got listed. The bell rung just early today on the New York Stock Exchange with T0. So that's a symbolic event in terms of when it comes to tokenized real estate. So just to sort of give you an idea in terms of where things are going. But I thought I'd sort of give you that sort of quick snapshot in terms of what is real estate tokenization, how blockchain works, and its purpose. Jake, you want to add anything to that in describing what is real estate tokenization?
Sure. Yeah, I want to say you hit the nail on the head as usual. But one of the big things that draws me to real estate and property tokenization is investor liquidity. Real estate is notoriously illiquid, and my father, having lived through the recession 2008 while owning property, he's the prime example of someone that got stuck holding something that should not have been stuck. There should always be options and liquidity for investors. Whether there are people looking to purchase that property or not, the option should still be there. So being able to bring property tokens onto systems, level 2 systems, layer 2 systems such as DigiShares or T0 is just another way that the world's moving forward in the right way for real estate tokenization and different ways to own real estate.
100%. Then we move on to Mary. We know we start we got an education around tokenizing real estate. When we start talking about real estate in general, again, the fundamentals are the same, and the fundamentals are the same also across whether you're tokenizing and not tokenizing, whether you're basically in Australia, US. The fundamentals are very similar in terms of when you are looking for a property. And obviously ticking all the boxes as far as the property is concerned. Probably pick your brain, Mary. Obviously, your experience, and given that you're heavily investing in real estate, and also, as you said, in terms of educating people in terms of investment property. What are some of the critical factors that you look for when you're buying a property, or educating people in terms of when buying property? What are some of those critical things? Because I understand that residential is what you really focus in, I believe.
Yes, I have. I personally own all residential property, so that is kind of what I focus on. Although I'm starting to try to invest a little bit on the commercial side, but I'm not directly running those properties.
So what are some of those critical things when you, in terms of residential? What are some of those I know you have got a checklist that you go through. Maybe you want to share some of those critical things from the checklist that you look for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and some of this can kind of connect with commercial side as well, but for mainly for residential, it's going to start with location. So you're choosing a market that either has a growing population, or you're sort of getting ahead of progress where the population is starting to grow, and you know that there's growth in the future, right? And then there's a reason that people are moving to that area or they're going there. So you're looking for job growth and development, and you're kind of trying to get ahead of the curve. So you're looking for places that are just starting to see people moving there, building new shops, new restaurants going in. And often you're also, looking for companies that are just opening new plants and things. So Amazon, here in the U.S., a new Amazon plant is kind of a famous trope of like, okay, there's going to be an explosion of jobs and population and people moving to that area. So you want to kind of get in as, Amazon's announcing that area. So location's going to be a big primer. I mean, I guess for you, and you talk about with Brisbane and the Olympics coming, and that's going to bring a lot of jobs and housing and stuff. So it's kind of a similar idea where you're looking at those kind of fundamentals. And then the next thing is you're trying to decide what type of property you're going to buy into. So if you're going into multifamily, there's certain things that you look for in the quality of the property, its actual location within neighborhoods, the safety, the crime level, the what kind of rents you're getting in the area, is that going up, and then the quality of your tenant. So you're kind of it sounds like you're taking a lot into account, but what happens is as you look at properties to buy, it's the same kind of checklist and same fundamentals over and over and over for every property. So after a little bit of practice, you automatically just start thinking through like, okay, well, here's what the asking price is. This is what the rents are. This is the kind of neighborhood it is. So this is the tenants. I tend to go, at least in the U.S., the way we talk about it is like a B to C class property. And that just means, like blue collar workers who are, they work hard, they're renting a place, they keep the property really nice. And you usually get a pretty good return on your money in terms of the price you're paying for the property compared to the rents that you get. If you buy in like a A-class property that we call in the U.S., it's really good neighborhoods, really good schools, but you're going to be paying more for it. And you're kind of banking on appreciation more than cash flow. And I'm sort of like a in-the-middle investor, so I look for good cash flow in my investment, and I'm sort of thinking that, appreciation will happen, but I don't completely, I won't buy a property just based on appreciation. So I've kind of thrown a lot at you. I don't know if you have any questions for you. I'll kind of pause there.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic, Mary. It's, as you said, the fundamentals, those fundamentals are critical. So it's great to hear in terms of, someone like yourself that's been doing it, and now it's all obviously second nature to you because you already know those go through things in your head. And I guess for people who are looking at starting out or delving into in the early stages in terms of real estate, having that checklist is critical in terms of making sure that you don't miss anything. But like myself and yourself and like Jake, all those things are second nature, and I think sometimes we take for granted those fundamentals, those ticks that we've got to tick through. But yeah, that's and I guess in terms of when you mentioned about the B and C class type of assets, I guess from your perspective that your focus, it's obviously you've got a wider market. I guess in terms if you have to sell, the market is wider when you're sort of focusing around that space. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's more opportunity to both buy and sell, and there is more kind of opportunity in that area, right? There are just more landlords who are going to be owning those kind of properties, and I mean, you have to find the deals, though, right? So you're still kind of fighting to find the good deals, but yeah, I think. For me, it's the best all around in terms of, again, I talked about cash flow. So how much I'm paying for property, the cash flow I get out of it, but also the problems that come with it. So, there's not as much repairs and maintenance that need to be done. There's sort of a balance there. And I could go months without hearing from my tenants at all, right? So there's not a lot of issues or kind of headaches that come with it. So it's been a little bit of a nice little sweet spot that I've been able to find in that kind of class of properties. Nice. And just touching on in terms of managing the properties, do you self-manage the properties? Do you get agents to manage? I know it's been a topic on your space session a few weeks ago. But probably share in terms of what your approach is. Oh, yeah. So it's a big topic. So we decided to self-manage because my furthest property was an hour away. And we were discussing how, typically property management is around, 10% of rent. And usually you pay the first month's rent as well when they find a tenant for you. So I decided I wanted to know exactly what property management looked like so that I knew eventually when we passed it on to a property management company, I kind of knew what they should be doing, right? Instead of just kind of turning all my property over to them and not really knowing anything. So it's been an interesting learning curve, I will say, when you self-manage. We do eventually want to turn it over to a company or some kind of version of that. We're not exactly sure with our properties in Florida, but as I said, I am looking to invest in a different market now, and that's definitely going to be, a property management straight away because it's in a different state. But at least now I feel like I know the kinds of questions I would ask a company, before I sign with them, and I would kind of know how to keep an eye on them because you still have to, it's never passive. Even if you have a property management company, you got to keep an eye on them and, kind of still communicate with them. And that's one thing about tokenized real estate I do like, is that it is pretty passive. So it's a lot more passive than what I'm doing. So that was one of the interests I did have with that.
Agents can be challenging, managing agents. I think I mentioned on your space a few weeks ago when you had that topic. When I look at managing agents, I always look in terms of how they treat their tenants, because that says a lot about their values. And that's the criteria I use historically in terms of our properties. We do use agents to manage our properties in terms of our family properties. Again, with the tokenized ones, we're going to self-manage to begin with because we want to have full control in terms of that good relationship with the tenants, and then at some point in time looking at agents. But for me, in terms of using agents, it's always look in terms of the critical part is how they treat their tenants, because that tells you a lot about human behavior and their values. And that's I think that's critical. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I do agree with that. It's pretty important. So there's a lot of those questions on how they treat the tenants and what's their process for collecting rent or late rent, or just even repairs and maintenance, their response time. I'm like, the second my tenant tells me something, I get someone, that day, if not the next day. Actually, yesterday, an AC, broke down. So I had them there within an hour, the company that we typically use. But for me, Florida, like, the AC has to work. I feel bad for my tenants if it doesn't. So, but there are certain things of like, well, what kind of response time do you have and things like that. So you want to make sure your tenants are taken care of, because they do view the properties you have as their home, right? So, and you want to kind of take care of them, and it's a win-win kind of situation. They'll take care of the house, and but I did want to say, I mean, you're absolutely right in terms of with tokenization and but the fundamentals of a property, are the same. And the company I invested in here, when I was looking at the properties they had to offer of, to buy the tokens, I mean, I used all my processes that I would typically do. And what's great is it's so transparent. You can see the paperwork that's given about a property. You know what the rents are. You can learn a lot about it, even though you yourself didn't first purchase the property, or at least in the U.S., typically the property is bought and then you own a part of the LLC, right? But you can learn, everything that you need about the property itself. And that's how I chose, what I invested in was the same thing as if I was just the only person purchasing it. But I was just one of several to purchase the tokens on a property. And I love that. I think it's great because it's such a low barrier of entry for people to just get started. And yet you still have to think like any other investor. So, you've said that, and I'm like, yes, that's so right. It's so true.
Totally, it's so true, isn't it? And again, it's one of those things that if you're in property like yourself and you're looking at tokenized and looking at our platform or other tokenized platforms, that's all the things that are second nature to you. So naturally, you're going to be sort of thinking as if you're actually buying that yourself. But it's so true. It's so true what you're saying, Mary. With the debt levels, in terms of when you buy properties, obviously in America, I know here in Australia, banks will lend you typically 80% for residential property. Sort of tell us in terms of, obviously when borrowing funds there in America, tell us in terms of what the barriers are with banks in terms of dealing with the banks and And two, in terms of what sort of LVRs, what we call them LVRs, and I think it's called debt asset value ratios. I mean, we've got different, language how we describe it. Basically, debt to the property value ratios. So people just sort of share that with us.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question. So basically, if it's a single family home as a rental, it's 20%. Right now, they're actually making duplexes, triplexes, those kind of properties, the small multifamilies. Most lenders, most banks are going to actually require 25% down. And I will say the lending has been pretty strict. There's lending out there to get, but you do have to jump through a lot of hoops compared to pre-2008, I would say, of course. But yeah, so 20% down. And when you're buying a residential property, so that for us, it's 4 doors or under, you can get like a conventional 30-year fixed loan. But you are turning in, you're basically signing your firstborn child away, in the terms of the amount of paperwork that, you got to get. It takes, because I did 4 last year. It's just so much paperwork, which is good, at the same time. So, they're looking at your credit score. They're basing it on your income. So we have the debt to income ratio is maybe what you were talking about, but it just basically tells you how much debt you can have compared to the income that you have coming in. And once you hit about 50%, then they stop loaning you those kind of loans, and your options are either, and we're kind of getting close to that, which is why I'm very familiar with it. And so your options become either going commercial lending, which means higher interest rates and a shorter loan term. So typically you can get, a 30-year fixed. Well, with commercial, most are about 20 years, and there's a balloon after 10. So you typically have to refinance at that point. But we haven't had to go commercial yet, but there is one product right now that's pretty popular for us hitting our DTI, and that is they go off of the debt coverage ratio. So that is the purchase price and then how much the rent's coming in. And as long as you hit a certain ratio, they'll lend on that. And that is considered a residential loan, so you can get the 30-year fix. But again, the interest rate will be a little higher. And that's usually what you end up doing. If you have lower credit, they'll still lend to you. You just will either need a bigger down payment, or you're going to get a worse interest rate, when they're loaning to you. So, the best thing for people to do for sure is to, I personally feel like using a lender, so a mortgage broker, where they'll kind of see everything that's available, is really the best way to go. I've worked with lenders and I've worked with banks, and banks can be kind of, tough sometimes, whereas because they have so many different products that sometimes they don't know everything, and you're trying to figure stuff out and they're missing things. Whereas a lender, it's all they do, right? So I don't know if anyone is listening and they're thinking about what they should do. I typically recommend finding a really good lender that can kind of give you the answers, get you pre-qualified, and help you figure all that out. But that's kind of, I guess a bit of a lowdown.
That's great. That's great, Mary. That's great. When you talk about lender, you're talking about mortgage broker, right?
Yeah, exactly. A mortgage broker, basically. Yeah.
No, I'm a big advocate in terms of, it's too hard to deal with banks directly. So typically in the past, we've done that. Mortgage brokers, you get that great relationship, access to everything. And then came along tokenized, that we don't have to deal with banks anymore, which is fantastic.
Very fantastic. This is why I'm here, man. This is why I'm here.
Looking in terms of your journey, Mary, obviously you've been involved in investing in traditional real estate, but we sort of look at tokenized. You sort of put out your magic wand in 5 years' time, and given what you know now in terms of tokenized property, do you see tokenized property sort of complementing your existing and growing traditional real estate portfolio?
I mean, I definitely think so. Like I said, I've started a little bit just to begin to kind of understand it a bit better, but I can definitely see that. I think it's a great, for me, it's really great because it's, a lot of people will kind of look at the crypto space or in the NFT space and kind of say, I don't get it. Why do I own this digital photo of something, right? But for me, I feel like tokenized real estate is a great sort of way to connect with people who don't understand the use cases for crypto. I think it's a great way to understand, to explain it to them, for them to understand, for them to connect. As I mentioned, it lowers the barrier. It makes it, for $50, you can own, granted, a very small piece of a company, but you can get started in that way. So I think it really opens it up. I've had so many people say to me, well, I don't have enough money to invest yet. Okay, part of it is, I had to spend several years, staying on a really strict budget and working really hard until we could sort of build up our finances enough to kind of do what we're doing. But if for a lot of people, if they can kind of get in the game even sooner, I think it will be, really great for them. So I love that idea. And I love the idea that you can kind of own internationally easier. You can own a piece of something, like that you would never buy. Like, one of the first, I guess, tokenized properties in the U.S. was a ski resort, right? I'd never buy a ski resort. But I don't know, maybe I would own a piece of a ski resort. I love that idea of having that opportunity in many different things that typically would be unavailable to you. And as you mentioned, like on the blockchain where things are, I trust it more, right? So
you can't change it.
Yeah, exactly. You can't change it. So there, it's. People talk about fraud, but it's like, well, actually, I feel like on the blockchain, it's like there's less of a chance for fraud, right, than what we currently deal with. So I do see it. I think we have to be able to figure out how to get the message out there to connect with people in a way that they understand the opportunity that is, tokenized real estate in the crypto space and blockchain, and kind of everything as a whole. Sometimes I think people they kind of go, no, that's not, I don't get it. It's too much, right? And so, but I think this is a really great way to kind of connect with people and explain why it would really benefit them. So yeah, I do see it really taking off for sure. This is like early stages, and it's pretty exciting.
It is. It's and again, as you said, I think a lot comes to education, awareness, telling people what is and what you can do, because it's still early, as you mentioned. And again, this is obviously we're playing our part to trying to educate in terms of what our industry is doing, tokenized real estate and blockchain industry is doing. But yeah, I think it's probably easy for people to actually know a bit of blockchain, to know what blockchain is, to actually articulate what real estate tokenization. I think the hardest barrier at the moment to people that don't know blockchain and trying to actually tell them what tokenization real estate is, that's another different level of education, because you've got to start with blockchain first. So, but again, slowly, one by one, people, will get aware in terms of what's going on. And again, it's when you see things like T0, as I said before, a secondary market that's listed on the New York Stock Exchange, that tells you where the industry is going. And I think if we sort of look back to where the internet was when it first started, if I can still remember, 1992 when I first accessed the internet, and how fast that grew, and people were sort of worried about, but emails, how couldn't we, like emails, is it safe to send stuff through emails? And the big concern, if you sort of remember back then, the people were big concerned about using emails. Now we couldn't live without emails, how it's revolutionised the way we do things. And I think the same thing is going to be with property in terms of people to access property, and especially young people coming through and people that never had the opportunity to access real estate. They can start their journey by acquiring a few property tokens, tokenized property, to start their journey, because they might have that deposit now to go into a home. But again, they're getting into the market, into the property market through the tokens, the property tokens. And these property tokens go up in value, and say in 2 years' time, they might be able to cash in some of those property tokens because they've been exposed to the property, the real estate. And then they can use some of that to put the deposit down on their home they're going to be buying. But if a person does nothing in terms of getting into real estate, they just every year the property values keeps getting higher and higher, and they've got to come up with more of a deposit. So they're always chasing their tail. And I see the people I talk to who, whether it be family members in terms of the journey what they've been trying to do. My nephew is an example. It's like he's chasing his tail every year trying to get into the real estate. And again, it's one of those things you need to start. And I guess real estate property tokens allows them to start their journey into real estate. So it's great things ahead. Well, what I'll do, I'll open up the floor now. It's to ask Mary any questions. So we're quite fortunate to have her here and her deep knowledge in terms of real estate. So I'll open up the floor. If you want to come up and add for me to add as a speaker, please send me your invite to add as a speaker. But so while we sort of wait for people to come up, Mary, is there any sort of thing that any other thing you sort of want to add to the mix in terms of what you're doing, or just in general in terms of real estate? I know you've been under the spotlight. I know you've been under the spotlight with my questions, but open it up.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I think that I think when you're talking about like tokenized real estate as well, it's one thing is that it's a low barrier of entry in terms of how much money you need to have to get started, but it is also that for someone who they love their 9 to 5, they've got a very busy schedule. It's quite an easy investment to make once you kind of make the decision on which company you want to buy into or which property you want to own. And then it kind of, it doesn't do anything, right? Then you don't have to do anything. Whereas, real estate, even what I do, buying single family homes and multifamily, I mean, it's very hands-on, and those are things people have to remember. You really have to stay on top of it. And it's kind of like, I have a 9 to 5, but it's like my half other 9 to 5, as we're building the business. And so, it is also that you can invest in something that and you directly own. When I compare, because I own a couple of REITs, but even with REITs, I'm not making the decisions that the companies are making, and I'm trying to choose a company that I feel like will make the best decisions. And technically, there are shareholder meetings and things, but the CEOs are making the final decisions on those companies. And so, with tokenized real estate, you own a piece of a property that you chose, right? And so I do love the idea for those reasons, because again, what I do, I try to buy a property that needs a bit of work. I'm not a flipper, and I don't buy complete gut jobs, but I do buy property that needs some work, because that's where you're going to kind of make your money, right? Because once you fix a property up and you get a tenant in, you can refinance, and then you sort of take most of your money back out. So that's how I've been able to kind of scale up. And in doing that, it's a lot of work. So it's one of those things. It's great, and I've loved it, but it is a lot of work. And so when we sort of compare, what are some of the reasons why, I've had someone say to me, well, why would someone do tokenized real estate, right, compared to whatever other options they already have? I know Jake mentioned, how illiquid the real estate market is, and that is such a good point. But I think also it is the amount of work, the amount of thought that needs to go into it. And so this is an easier way to directly own a piece of property that you then can leave on autopilot, I think. So I was kind of throwing that idea out there as well.
Yeah, that's so true. So true. I mean, and again, it's quite diverse in terms of where people are buying into tokenized real estate. Obviously, as I said, young people that are coming through, finding it hard to borrow money, that's obviously an easy option for them to start their real estate journey by buying property tokens. But we also, at the moment, at the other end, we're also talking with some families, family office families that they've invested in property themselves, and they've got quite a big portfolio of property. but they're also now looking to diverse in terms of their property portfolio by actually adding overseas property. I think what a lot of countries have is obviously got foreign ownership rules. So people to actually buy direct property in other countries is difficult because you've got, I know in Australia, you've got foreign ownership rules in place. So I guess through our tokenized property here, that sort of gets rid of those barriers. So at the moment we're talking with some families in Florida, a couple of families in Florida, a couple of families in New York, also here in Australia, that although they've got a traditional real estate portfolio, they're actually now interested in actually buying property overseas. In our case here in Australia, they just want to diverse. That typically probably they wouldn't buy this type of properties, A-class properties here in Australia, because they've been investing in other types of property, commercial and industrial, but they don't know nothing about residential. And I guess this is what they're looking for as a toe-in into residential, knowing that they can buy into different types of properties, A-class properties that we're going to be putting up over the next 12 months. And I guess from you, Jake, you probably have similar experiences, obviously, in the US. You're in Chicago. I guess in terms of your properties, you're going to be tokenizing. It'll be the same thing in terms of people. You have a diverse of people who are going to be buying into your properties, given what you're doing.
Yeah, actually, we've discussed this idea to the best of our ability with our subcontractors, and they're actually interested in it as well. They may not understand the tech behind it, but they always tell us they're looking for ways to improve their family's futures and stuff, and potentially having investments in the buildings they're working on and properties that they're maintaining is something that they found very interesting. So yes, a very, very diverse group of people, blue collar, white collar, all around.
It's interesting. Something Jake and I sort of talked about in one of the previous spaces. We spoke about in terms of tokenized property, and the tenants are actually in that property. They've also got the ability to buy into their own property that they're leasing. Also buying tokens in their own property that they're actually living in. Again, that provides a bit of a buy-in in terms of the fact that they now actually also have a part ownership in the property that they're renting. They're definitely going to look after that property a bit better as otherwise. So again, just the unlimited ways in terms of you can actually create this environment of tokenized property in terms of what's going on in the future is really unlimited. But that was something we spoke about, Jake.
Yeah, it's really something. Like I was talking about a billboard outside of a giant rental community, invest in your own home kind of thing, but without having to purchase the whole home. So in the future, you can live in that rental home. You'll be earning, dividends or distributions based on the rental community's success. But mostly, the company that's running it, that's kind of who you're investing in. And along with the tenants that you're living around and yourself. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Your people have a incentive to keep the property nice. And in all honesty, it'll probably lower property management fees and incurred costs for the rental community by doing that, giving people an incentive to keep their places nice.
100%. And the
so many possibilities.
Yeah. Sorry, Mary?
Yeah, sorry. I just was saying, wow, yes, I've never thought of that, and that would be amazing. Kind of just as well to really empower the tenant so that they feel like for them to feel like they can own a piece of this place that they feel like already is their home. That would be amazing, actually. I mean, I've had a tenant, when I bought one of our properties, say to me, well, I just thought it was rude because they didn't even ask if I wanted to buy it, right? And she'd been living there for 6 years. And, I was like, oh, I'm really sorry. And it made me kind of sad, right? Because I know she could not afford to buy it, right? But she viewed it as her home, right? So she felt like, well, why didn't they even ask? And so that would be I don't know, that would be really great to give them that kind of opportunity to own a piece of it, as you said. And of course, on our end, I feel like they would take better care and they may stay longer. So you would have lower rates of turnover and things like that. So, but wow, when you said that, I'm like, oh, that's such a great idea. And I can see it heading in that direction.
It's unlimited in terms of what you can do, and even like the same fundamentals as Jack was saying with the subcontractors that are, in terms of involved in a new build. I mean, that's powerful, because obviously they're also going to be doing it. They're going out the extra distance to doing it, making sure the works are as of a higher quality that they probably wouldn't normally do, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's such a good point too. That's really, yeah, it's really good.
Mary, you want to take that idea and run with it? Feel free, right? We're in here to collaborate. We're here to build off each other. So, I'm hoping that someone comes into these spaces one day and hears something that we talk about and is like, oh man, I have the money to do something like that. Because rental communities aren't cheap. That's a lot of homes. It's a lot of infrastructure. You gotta know what you're doing. So currently we're trying to get there. We're just in the infancy of it.
Yeah, I am definitely interested. So I'll be talking to you more about it. I don't quite have that.
That's great, Mary. It's great. Look, if there's no other question, we'll try to wrap up. We'll try to get to about an hour. So I can just get you back. Sorry, Mary? I just lost you for a little sec there.
Oh, no, sorry. I said sorry. My phone cut out, but I'm back here, so I'll go.
Loud and clear. So before we wrap up, again, if there's no other questions, again, it's Mary has got her weekly session. If I could just, I forget the times now. It's in my calendar, Mary. It's locked in my calendar every week. But maybe I just want to share in terms of the time each week and any sort of final thoughts before we sort of wrap up from you.
Yeah, no, thank you. So we have a real estate spaces. It's on Tuesday nights Eastern Standard Time at 8 p.m. So 8 p.m., 5 p.m. Pacific, and in Australia, I think that's the morning, right, on Wednesday.
It is. Yes.
I always appreciate when you come. I'm like, what time is it over there? But yeah, so we kind of talk about a number of different topics. Last week, as was mentioned, it was talking about short-term rentals and Airbnb, but we kind of run the gamut on just even how to find deals and kind of mortgages. And I think we're going to be talking about next what's going on in the housing market and how things are changing and stuff like that. So it's always a kind of a fun conversation as much as we can, and we try to get some questions answered. So, but yeah, I mean, last minute thoughts, I think, I always tell people to get started as soon as they can in real estate. If I could have 10 years sooner, I wish I would have, right? So it's never too late to start. And now with what, tokenization, as we said, the opportunities are beyond what we even know what they are, right? So it's, even if you start there, and then you can, buy your own physical properties, but get in on the tokenized space. I mean, you can't really go wrong because people need a place to live. And so it's always a really great investment. And it's one you can really trust, right now with money printing and Lord knows what governments around the world are doing. It's hard to trust the stock market. It's hard to know kind of where to invest your cash. And with inflation going up everywhere as well, it's you kind of worry about maintaining your wealth and purchasing power and things like that. And so for me, real estate is the best investment for that, along with, cryptocurrency and gold and things like that. But I think it's good to be diverse, and I think that real estate needs to be somewhere in everyone's portfolio in one form or another. So, yeah.
100%. You couldn't have said any better, Mary. That's so true, so true. But thank you so much. Jake, is there anything you'd like to say before I start to wrap up?
No, not at all. I'm pretty content with where we're at right now.
Well, just again, big thank you to Mary. Really appreciate, Mary, you giving up your time to share your real estate experience and your education side of things that you work so hard on with your spaces every week. And as I said to you, that it hasn't got the same energy as Chris here with your that you have on your show every week, but we try our best here. But
you're doing good. I'm not sure if many people can match him, so I just kind of let him go. I'm like, you do your thing. I'm gonna be on the side here. But thank you so much for having me on in your space, though. It's really been fun, and I appreciate the opportunity.
No, thank you, Mary. And we'll just have to get you to download your Raven Coin wallet so we can I can send you that NFT gift to you to say thank you.
I swear I'm going to do it. I have to sit down for like a second and just sort it out, basically. But I promise I will.
If you have any troubles, let me know. But I do want to give you those gifts that I promised you. So, but yeah, look, thank you so much. And again, thank you everybody for joining us. This has been recorded, so if you've missed out on anything, you can always play back or share with your family and friends. Again, we're early in terms of tokenizing real estate. Real estate fundamentals are the same. Doesn't matter whether it's traditional real estate or whether it's tokenized real estate. But tokenized real estate is here to stay. It's going to be it is the future of real estate to people to be able to add to their traditional real estate portfolio and keep building both along the way. And again, get on the bus. As I said, the journey on the bus has started. We know the destination. Just make sure you don't miss the bus. Thank you all. Have a great day, great evening, great morning, depending where you're at, and stay safe. Bye for now.